it's so prevalent in our society, and it's catalyzed wars. It's built up and crippled economies. And it's just this plant. Like it's just this leaf hanging out. Has a bunch of different flavors to it depending on how you engage with it, you know. But it's very reflective, right? It highlights what's there, right? Like nothing like war to be like a reflection of what's been building up for a long time and something comes to a head.
Hello, friends. Today's episode is about tea. Most of us drink tea or coffee to socialize or to perk up our attention. Although I've been drinking tea, known as chai, in South Asia for most of my life, little did I know about the depth of tea culture, its spiritual roots, and the indigenous communities who have been cultivating tea for nearly 2,000 years. I personally have had a background in martial arts, and the reason why I do it is because it helps me to be present and to become aware of the attitudes that I hold. So recently, when I sat down for my first tea ceremony, so to speak, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that the art of tea can help cultivate gratitude, awareness, generosity, and many other beautiful qualities. So in this special episode, we'll be diving into the rituals, the culture, and the history of the art of tea. And my guest today is my good friend Buckminster Bird, who is a tea connoisseur at the Soft Medicine Sanctuary Tea House in Northern California. Did you know that tea has shaped societies, catalyzed wars, and has been used as a medicine and elixir throughout the millennia? If not, then I hope that you'll stick around and join us as we steep ourselves in the art of tea, its culture, history, and revival as medicine and elixir in our current times. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please give it a like and share with your friends. And now let's turn to this conversation.
Well, welcome to a special episode today with Buckminster. And this is, let's call it a tea episode. And tea has been a recent sort of adventure or a very new thing for me. And I have a background in, for me at least, I have a background in martial arts. And a big aspect of martial arts has been cultivation of presence. And I think a few weeks ago, I sat with you for the first time in a tea ceremony where you were pouring tea, and it was remarkable for me. I'd heard of the connection in Japan, at least, of the connection of the samurai martial arts and tea, and how they have been informing each other for a very long time. But until I sat with you, little did I know of the depth of tea. And then we talked, and we said we should do an episode. And thank you for willing to be doing this, Buck.
It's my pleasure.
Yes.
I mean, it's just kind of doing more of what I like to do anyway, which is drink tea and chat and connect. So the only difference is the lighting's better. And I appreciate what you spoke to, of like just how you resonate with it, and the background with martial arts is cool, and I share a little bit of that, but it's cool in this space in Sebastopol, seeing the different ways in which people connect with each other and connect with tea and connect with each other through tea. It definitely has a really rich history and cultural relevance and cross-cultural relevance as well. Like you can see I'm pouring tea in the traditional Chinese style called Gong Fu Cha. And there's, ways of relating with tea throughout many, many cultures as the second most drunk, the beverage that's the second most drunk in the world, next to water, right?
Next to water.
So I think there's something to that. And that was the kind of like the beginning for me of just like being so amazed with this simple thing and amazed with how much I was amazed with it, that it just kind of kept going and like kept building on itself, and just felt really like conducive to the other thing that I spoke to enjoying doing, which is connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we all maybe want to do in some
Yes.
form or another.
Yes. Well, before we take a dive, I also wanted to say that this set is one of our first sets, and thank you for inviting us to Soft Medicine Sanctuary, which is here in Sebastopol, California, a tea house, but so much more than that.
Mm.
And we have actually with us here for helping us set up this stage and this set, Dylan, who's off camera and is also partaking in tea. So thank you, Dylan, for helping set this up. And so maybe let's
want to include incense in here too, along with the tea. The Chinese and many others would see incense as, the Chinese especially and the Japanese would see incense as integral, like a really wonderful pairing with tea. And in one easy sense, it's an old way of measuring time and relating with time in maybe a different sense, and also fills the space nicely. So anyway, thanks for letting me light some, and it can be our hourglass too.
Yes, because we had spoken that we'll contain this first conversation in an hour, just because there's so much going on for you. So one of my interests with doing the Potential Paradigms podcast has been cultivating within myself sort of an art of conversation, which I wasn't aware of when I started. But I became aware of the nuances and continue to be a student of how to cultivate presence between two people and how to bring the best out of each other in a conversation. And of course, a big aspect of that is connection, which we derive tremendous joy from. And when I sat down with you the first time, I did not know about tea, but it just seemed like such a deep tradition of cultivating presence and connection. So maybe to start with, how did you get into tea? Where did your journey begin, or what was the underlying current then, back when you got into it, versus where you are today?
Cool. I'd love to speak to that, but also I don't want your cups to get cold. So,
Thank you.
Well, my connection to tea has been going on for a long time. Well, relatively, I think, to my life, which is young. And I should say too that, my connection to tea in a formal sense as well, of really exploring the depth of it and the practices or traditions around it is very young. It's really, I really don't want to be called, sometimes people come and be like, there's the tea master, and it's very sweet. But it's really no, the tea master is the person cultivating the leaf, or the people harvesting, or the farmers and the also folks storing tea and really dedicating their lives to it for many, many decades. So that's important for me, that I'm very much a student of it and will continue to be for the foreseeable, just forever a student. And I came into it in that way where I just stumbled into a tea house in Santa Cruz when I was 18, just looking for a job. I had just started college there, and I was going into every shop that I could on Main Street in Santa Cruz, and just seeing if, have my resumes in hand, just seeing if they were hiring. And then I wandered into a kind of cobblestone-y side road and little alley from Main Street, and saw this little gated shop and beautiful plants and serene. It almost looked like a club. But I kind of wandered in, and beautiful lighting in there, and there was a lot of vintage antique Chinese wares. And yeah, I was just kind of like enamored with it all, and then asked the fellow if they were hiring. And they said no. But they asked what my connection to tea was. And yeah, I would like just kind of play at home and like make different blends or like get different like herbs together and yeah, try out different things and like played with roots and maybe green tea here and there, or like maybe I would be gifted some genmai cha, like toasted rice, green tea, and things like that. And so I just had a lot of fun with it. But it became clear to me, and it was clear to the person I was speaking to, that I hadn't like been introduced to tea with a capital T, which yeah, kind of has a fun paradox around it of being like very particular and it's like a very like, it's just a single ingredient of tea, Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. But it's also it can be engaged with casually at the same time. So I was introduced to just this process of brewing tea very intentionally in this format, intentionally, and just like first and foremost the intention to just like get like the best cup of tea from it, but also yeah, from a taste perspective, but also as a means of like crafting a perfect moment, almost like everywhere from the environment, like of the space that I walked into of that tea house, to the just the welcoming nature of the gentleman behind the counter, to like inviting me into tea and just like sharing story. That all was part of the process of having tea. It went way beyond the brew in the cup. So, and that's what had me continuing to go back to that tea house and engage with it as my second living room, or really first living room. I was there more than my home. And it's where I just developed my friendships and community and connections. And yeah, like it's where I felt really, it's where I would feel grounded and able to recollect. Yeah, it's just, things just made more sense there. And then that continued on for like years since, and then I got my own tea set after a couple of years, and my own tea, and just kind of would like travel around and just like cultivate that space wherever I went. And I would like be driving down the road and like see cool houses or like like everything from cabins to mansions, and I would because I was a bit of a vagabond and I like lived on my van or traveled a lot, and oftentimes I would think of like, yeah, like if I do get a home or house, what would it look like? And the first thing I would always think of is, could I brew some good tea there? That was the only thing that mattered. And like, surely too, when I was traveling and like going to hotels and hostels and camping and whatnot, it was really important for me to like just have a little simple setup where I could brew myself tea, because that's where home was for me. And it became my way of connecting with people at parties or gatherings or yeah, all the rest.
Beautiful. So I'm sort of curious to know how connecting with people, because I would like to get into it a little bit. What does that mean for you, and how tea plays a role in that? And perhaps also, as you've been vagabonding and traveling in different communities, how have you found the response to this way of serving tea and relating?
Well, I think one of the important things for me to remember while traveling is that, and while not traveling, just engaging with all people, is that there are so many beautifully diverse ways of being, thinking, connecting, and I've always found it important to highlight that and to like, yeah, just to remind myself to listen more and to pay attention. So like I would never try to like impose my own beliefs or perspectives, or even like my own ways of brewing tea, even like with folks. And in that way, I found tea to be really supportive, because I see it as highlighting what's there and having the root of the spirit of this plant being one of connection and maybe infusing community together, like steeping together. You put a bunch of different herbs or leaves into a pot and like brew them together with water and hot water, activated water, and then something beautiful can come from it when it's infused mindfully. And then I can see community in the same way. And yeah, that would just look like kind of just really setting myself up to be able to listen more. And that doesn't have to include this whole setup. That doesn't have, like, it could be anything. It could be like if I have to, have a fidget spinner, or if I need to like twirl a string around, or if I need to play with clay, or if I need to get up and stretch, anything that helps me self-regulate helps me also listen and pay attention and engage more in a space. And I found this practice, because it in many ways encourages mindfulness, would help me kind of regulate, and I'd be more able to, we can talk about anything, and this kind of helps facilitate that for me, and it becomes a lens through which to receive others and have them be received, or receive others and be received by others. And and tea as a plant and through the service has a great way of encouraging equanimity, and having each other see each other on the same plane, and see each other eye to eye. We're all sitting on the same at the same level physically, and at that point it doesn't matter what status I have. It doesn't matter what status you have, how much money we have, where we came from, our backgrounds, our political views, any of it. And it's all present at the same time. So it's, it's not something that, it's this interesting paradox of we want it to be alive and present in the space, but also not something that is causing any leverage socially. And so we can just be present with all that's there with each other. I found tea service actually to be a really amazing way of resolving conflict, because it just has a beautiful way of highlighting the innately human, and reminding us of the simplicity that can have and be. And because chemically it helps us come back to ourselves. I can speak to that if you want. And also culturally too. The Chinese character for tea, cha, contains the symbol for human within it, amongst the symbol for grass or garden, and also the symbol for forest. So in the character for tea is the story of the relationship between human beings and nature. And it's just, it's rooted in its being for thousands of years, and people have used it in this way, consciously or not. So that's the short version.
Yeah, no, thank you. Quite a few threads there. And I was born and raised in different parts of the world, but traditionally in northern India, in Kashmir region. And I remember my mom, cha, the same plant, is such a big part of the culture, but oftentimes it's just 10 cups of tea a day, and there is a social kind of gathering of community around that, but less of a ritual. Maybe it was present at some point, but more and more with time, it's become a commoditization. Yeah. And it just came to me that a few years ago there was a flood in the region of Pakistan, and they were trying to cut back on their imports. And it turned out that the highest import, the most expensive import, was tea.
Wow.
And that was a shock to me
Yeah.
as well. And people were getting upset less on the import of food than on tea. That kind of highlighted the cultural need of that.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me too of the Boston Tea Party, like being one of the catalysts of the American Revolution, this whole like event where people dressed up as Native Americans and like as a way of disguising themselves, and that's a whole other like cultural conversation as well. And but it was basically shoving boxes and boxes of tea off into the Boston Harbor as a way of really expressing their like distaste for and their boundaries against the British involvement with with what was soon to be, America and the States. And it's so prevalent in our society, and it's catalyzed wars. It's built up and crippled economies, and it's just this plant. Like it's just this leaf hanging out, has a bunch of different flavors to it depending on how you engage with it, But it's very reflective, right? It highlights what's there, right? Like nothing like war to be like a reflection of what's been building up for a long time, and something comes to a head. And something like tea, like when that's out of the picture, or when it's being thrown into a harbor, like it's a precious commodity, and it's a huge statement to remove it from a group of people, or to remove it from human relations. Reminds me of like the scene in the Simpsons movie, where there is like the whole city of Springfield was being contained by this like massive like plastic bubble or something, and they are just laughing and like making a Simpsons reference while like elegantly drinking tea and stuff. But that's like part of the beauty of it. Basically like people were like having a totally fine time hanging out, weren't really bothered about being like totally isolated from the rest of the world until their coffee machine broke. And then that was when like all mayhem broke and they started rioting and burning things to the ground, because then like they didn't have their coffee, which is, you could say like an American version of something that, of tea as well. I mean, tea obviously exists in the American paradigm, but coffee also is there as a means of connection, right? Like, what's one of the main ways that we might like want to hang out with someone, or get to know someone more? Let's go out for coffee. It's a really interesting, like, it's just so pervasive and it's everywhere, and it would be enjoyed by everything from farmers to the emperor in ancient times. So and now too, like, from your everyday person to the elite. So it's again with that like egalitarianism, and just like really like melting down the walls, are helping us see through these structural these structural impositions upon our inherent humanity, that are ultimately illusions.
Yes. One of the things that was coming to me is that often, even in coffee and maybe in tea as well, there are these cultural fads that become activated, where there are classes of who can afford what kind of tea or what kind of drink, and what it sort of means Starbucks comes to mind, where there have been fads, seasonal fads, and other fads where the price point also dictates who can participate. Has that also been an ancient sort of thread, and has there been an effort to sort of level that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with it, when anything becomes commodified, like you spoke to, like in India, how it's slowly become more and more commodified, that's going to happen. It's, again, it highlights what's there. Like it reflects the nature of people to like stratify, compartmentalize, and make tiers of things, and indeed, yeah, there are different qualities or like levels of quality of all things, of all materials. The level of refinement that can go into everything from an object to an action, right? Like how I pour this pot can be refined, and like I can add value to it in different ways. And yeah, things being cost prohibitive is a whole thing, because yeah, like speaking to the egalitarian nature of tea, and like it doesn't seem to like want to highlight itself too much, so even right now it's kind of interesting talking about tea and focusing in on this as a subject, because after a while it's like I just want to kind of drink it. And because then it from there it highlights what's there, and we just engage with each other with whatever else is happening, and like we can facilitate connection in a beautiful way, because we can talk about anything through this, and it can be really supportive in podcasts. You just have the teapot going and, roll camera and talk about sports,
Yes.
But yeah, to come back to your point, yeah, for the things being the whole price point thing, yeah, it's a huge topic. And yeah, I'm not an authority on it, but being an owner of a tea house, I can definitely speak to how I want things to be as accessible as possible, and I will cut down on prices as much as I can to make good things accessible. And yeah, and then when I say good things, that's again projecting my idea of what might taste good, feel good, be right for someone. I'm not going to tell anyone that Lipton tea is is terrible for you, or whatever, or low class tea or any of that. There's no reason to to kind of go there. What I can do is especially if someone's like, why is this tea more why can I get 10 pounds of Lipton tea for the same price as 10 grams of this other tea, and I would just do a comparison, because what matters really for me is ultimately how does it feel in your body, and how does it facilitate your life or not. And some people would say there's different schools on this. Some folks would say if it's your cup of tea, it's your cup of tea. That's plain and simple. And others would say yeah, do the comparison and and see the difference. Notice the difference. And everything from brew to taste to feeling and so on, and just take it from there. And also kind of on the other side of it too, if tea is very expensive, that doesn't mean it's better. If it's cheap, if it's less money, more money, sometimes it's arbitrary. Sometimes it's based on it depends on who's selling it and why they're selling it. They also say the best tea in the world is not sold, it's shared. And so it's kind of interesting getting into the realm of business with tea, because yes. I often just want to share it, really, because it can be conducive to just beautiful things, and that's why I'm involved in it. I'm not involved in it for money. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, as you were saying, it's so much connected with perhaps the British East India Company and so many other movements. So maybe getting back to the root of it. One of the reasons people have tea or coffee in the Western culture, tea in the East, in India, where I saw was about staying alert and using it to do work to generate a state. So there is this tendency of consumption, but one of the things that you highlighted, which comes to my attention, is that it's always around a social context. And so historically speaking, as we are currently in a time where a lot of the indigenous plants and traditions are being revitalized, and that is allowing us to reflect on the roots of things, the origin of things. And so I guess one of my questions is there a quality where this particular plant attracts community and social interaction? I don't know if you can answer that, but it looks like inherently tea has that quality of wanting to generate that community aspect.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah. as I'm continuing to drink this tea, it's like I almost just want to like sit with that. Like, yeah. Rather than, like as my attention's like dropping more into my body. But yeah, I appreciate what you said about it, like getting back to the root of things. I mean, that's why I'm engaging with traditional Chinese service too, and Chinese tea, because that was the root of it. You know, that was the origin of this plant was southwestern China, and there's like a pretty continuous thread that you can follow historically, and the history of British, Dutch, Portuguese involvement with China and with India in that regard, with regards to cultivating tea, kind of fractured that thread, you know, or like kind of took it, scrambled it up, and like scrambled it up into a tangled mess, and then like threw it over there, you know. And so in like slowly untangling this thread, it is like riddled with, you know, colonialism and yeah, and like just cultural imposition and projections of a totally different way of thinking and being, which again, ways of thinking and being and connecting, I think are very much highlighted by this thing being tea. And as we just like kind of delve deeper and look underneath the surface, yeah, there's just this rich cultural context and history and history of practice that we can learn from and remember, and just like, yeah, just kind of coming back to the purity of things. So yeah, so sharing something like this kind of connects a little bit to the yeah, maybe not just the cost of tea, but like the quality of tea. Like, why would I look for like higher quality tea, or what is that? You know, like whole leaf tea coming directly from farmers that are treated well. You know, it starts to repair that that continuity from the plant itself to the environment that it's being cultivated in and growing, and to the farmers that are engaging with it, to the people that process it, to the people that transport it or store it, to the people that, you know, like from hands to hands to hands through like all of these cultural contexts, just connecting in that way. And then to this tea caddy, to this pot, to this pitcher, to this cup, back to us. Like, and that's a big part of what Gong Fu Cha is like really like being with that and yeah, contemplating that continuous thread and trying to chip away at like this, chip away at the noise and like the static of yeah, kind of like where we've come to as like this rapidly globalized society and colonialized society, and in that way, not only are we potentially coming closer to like the root of just that understanding and like the root of like how this plant was originally cared for, cultivated, looked after, and cherished. but also coming closer to the root of ourselves, maybe. And it does that on a micro level with its own constituents. So it's, yes, tea as a plant, Camellia sinensis, like has caffeine, and so does coffee, and so does chocolate, in a way. There's like different variations of it chemically. Tea also has little bits of theobromine. It also has theophylline, has L-theanine, has GABA, has all these other stuff that, especially like L-theanine, is it's kind of like maybe the yin to the yang of caffeine. That, and also structurally it breaks down way slower in the body. So like oftentimes people are reminded of, or when they think of caffeine, they think of like being like ramped up and highly energized. And that can be, maybe because of the substance through which you consumed it, like everything from caffeine pills to like coffee, and also like espresso, like ground up beans. Like if you're consuming the actual thing itself, like then there's that much more absorption. So like it's important to think of the brewing process and like the production, like the production of the bean or leaf or what have you, as a way of like how does that affect how it then lands in your body. Because even with tea itself, like if I were to grind it up into small little bits or into a powder and then consume that powder, or if I was to keep the leaf whole, that's going to make a difference. And also I like the size of the vessel and how hot the water is or how long it's steeping, all of that also makes a difference too. So if someone's like, well, I still drink tea and I also get ramped up, it could be due to the nature of the tea and also how you're brewing it. And so there is inherently a balance in this leaf that, again, through the continuity of attention, we want to be able to maintain. And we want to maintain, like it can be maintained up to this pot, and then I could break it with how I brew it. But if it's well maintained, then the balance can be expressed and remembered and revitalized in the body. And that balance I'm speaking to is one of grounding and stimulation. And that balance of like feeling centered, grounded, elevated, and centered, right? Or in like Chinese thought, like, earth, heaven, human. And the larger, the principle of the San Bao, the three treasures. But remembering that in ourselves as a way of being able to, connect with humans, connect via the heart. And I think that to come way back over to what you brought up of this inherent quality of tea to encourage connection and community through that connection. And that can be connection one-on-one. It can be connection, between three. It can be connection with many others. But it starts also with oneself, and something that encourages mindfulness, both in the practice of brewing or like the substance itself, something that encourages just like a softness, a tenderness, and an alertness at the same time. That yin and yang together can be, so powerful, because I think it can, for me, it like reminds me of just who and how I am and helps me relax into that. That's that, to speak to the chemical thing again, the caffeine can be like the alertness, and then the L-theanine, and a lot of other things, and just how they relate, again, connecting to or helping bring about the relaxation in the body, like just calming the nervous system. That's so important. I said at the beginning to talk to the capacity for regulation, being able to regulate ourselves, and to remember that homeostasis and just that neutrality. Like it's so easy to forget that even exists, or what that is, or to think that you're in that balance, and you're actually not, because your mind had like adapted to a sense of like fight or flight, or constantly being way too alert, and that's the new normal. And I found tea to be really conducive to encouraging regulation and encouraging that, like actually finding that center point again.
Yeah, I mean, I think this word of center, when I was referring to martial arts, particularly in the samurai arts, there is this, with each movement, there is a return to the center. A lot of the practice is on this reminder of returning to the breath and the center, and not getting caught up in the movement, and also remembering that the power is emerging through the center. And another theme that you were talking about in our culture, it seems like a lot of the plants which were used as medicines or had this deep history of cultivating certain qualities, including the center, have now become drugs of addiction. We see this in cocaine, which came from the coca plant that's been used in many, many indigenous traditions. And now we have, even with our foods, we have like foods that have gluten 400% or 1,000% more than the ancient crops used to have. And perhaps that's true of the caffeine content of coffee and tea plants that are at least being cultivated in the West. And same goes for sugar, just amplify the sugar content in a number of things. But that connects to this quality of addiction, which I think is where we're just operating by certain tendencies. I just take my cup of coffee and then I'm ramped up to have this unlimited supply of energy till I burn out my adrenals and then become sick. And I feel like that the culture has become sick and is now returning to that center that you speak of. So I know that there's a lot of history of these tribes and indigenous communities that have been growing tea for thousands of years. And when I discovered that very recently, that was quite surprising to me, and how also that cultivation of this plant has been part of their spirituality and sort of animistic traditions where there was a deep connection with the living earth and the living plant. And their whole life seemed to be around, in certain communities, their whole life seemed to be around the cultivation of the plant and their inner qualities. If you like to speak to that. I know it's a very deep topic.
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't do it much justice. I can speak with a lot of reverence and curiosity, and speaking as a student to that, but I can't put a voice to the indigenous peoples who have worked with this plant. I'd rather meet them and let them speak, and I intend to do that very soon, as I'm going to go to China. But you spoke to a lot there, and I'm reminded of from a good friend and fellow lover of tea who talks about the transition of, or like the sort of stages of development, you could say, of one's relationship with any substance, being a stimulant to medicine, to food, to an elixir. And you can see that in an individual and in cultural context as well, and like with the collective over time. And it tends to start with stimulant, engaging with it as stimulant. So like way back, the cultural history of tea is said to go back almost 5,000 years to the there's like the origin story of the character of Shenong, who was he was a medicine man and a farmer, the divine farmer. So he was also an emperor, and he was basically he would engage with all different plants and and he was also like the creator of the first materia medica. So he engaged with all these different medical and poisonous plants and just like cataloged them in, took notes on them and cataloged their effects in his body. And the myth goes on to say that there's a lot of different tellings of this, but essentially he had consumed so much poisonous plants and healthy plants and everything that he was just like, blah, like totally winded and kind of at his last breath, and that a leaf floated down from a tree that he was sitting under and landed in his mouth, and he chewed on it, and it gave him life again. And from there it was, tea would be referred to as like the king of medicines in a way. That was the tea plant that had fallen in his mouth. So and speaking to what I have heard of some indigenous tribes of how they would treat tea not as a way of boiling it and making a brew of it. I mean, they do now, absolutely, but thousands of years ago, they would actually initially chew on it, or they'd integrate it also with food, and they'd stick it into their mouths, chew on it, and it would stimulate them, similar to like the coca leaf. So engaging with plant as stimulant, it gives you something, right? And in our American culture too, just Westernized culture as a whole, it's really easy to kind of experience something, be transformed by it, and want more of it. And that can lead to this, more and more mentality, and this the materialistic mentality of like gathering a good thing. And then maybe even trying to purify or extract or distill something so that you get more of that good thing. Well, what do I like from this substance? What I like from the coca leaf? Well, I like that it stimulates me. Okay, well, let's get more of it. Let's extract it down. Let's really boil it down to the core ingredients that are giving me this effect. And then you get cocaine, right? And that's, through this Westernized process, both psychologically and materially, taking it out of its natural environment and out of the the cultural context, the ecological context, and the chemical context of how it was originally embedded in our fabric of understanding things. That now you get this isolated substance of cocaine, and no doubt it's led to lots of issues, and for kind of obvious reasons of just whoa, it can really crack someone out, and also it's just this I see it as a what's the word, it's just a problematic way of looking at things when you are isolating it from its context, because the coca leaf on its own, when chewed on, provides that stimulating effect, and also mambe too, integrated with tobacco. It actually has that stimulating and grounding effect, similar to what I spoke to about tea, right? But then if you have caffeine and then you isolate it and you want more of it and you need more of it and you get espresso and then you get super jacked and then you crash because you had you just had this turbocharge of energy, and then your body tried to regulate by swinging to the other side of the pendulum and trying to rest after it had been so activated, and then you need more to get more productive. Then it can be a downward spiral from it's almost this paradox of removing everything else so that you can get this thing that you want, and getting more of that through isolating and that stuff's extra, when instead as you said, people coming back to the center in different ways, always remembering that center, that place that integrates everything, Chinese thought the earth element is one of, has to do with transition and integrating with the other elements and the other earth element is also can be seen as like the transition between seasons, or like if you were to write out the 5 elements, one way of putting it there is having earth in the middle and the other elements like revolving around it. And it can be seen as this energy of like, yeah, just being aware of what's around you. And, tea can bring us there because and when we work with it in a way that cultivates that balanced place and brings us back to our center so we can just be aware of what all that's happening. And that can also be a place of simplicity, which is, kind of different from that mentality of like isolating something or like isolating something in order to get more. When if we try to like still shaving away the extra stuff, but like in a way of coming back to the natural and the comprehensive, and engaging with a plant that is fully intact and like not removed from its context. I mean, like this plant is from China. We're not in China, but like through how I engage with it mentally, emotionally, how I brew it as a way of like really keeping as much continuity as possible in my being, then there's like that much more balance. And that's something that I think is really, intriguing when we try to remember or think about or learn about how Indigenous peoples engaged with plants, and we engage with them. Like in our culture, here in California, we might like talk about things being used as medicines, not like poultices to like heal cuts medicines, but like medicines like tools of healing, but that could also go beyond just like that would go beyond like the medical application of medicines, but thinking of it, engaging with it as like food, like again going back to that framing of like stimulant, getting more of that thing to to gosh, what was the other one?
Medicine.
Yes, getting from stimulant to medicine, like healing things, helping you become more whole, to food. Then now that you're whole, you can like imbibe in nourishment and then also connect with other people through that.
Yes.
Through that nourishment. So when you have cultures and people that have like been with each other or been with like things and plants for such a long time, they kind of get past the initial like appeal of a thing, and they like see it as connected to the rest of life, and then they engage with it as such. That centered place of just like of seeing all things as part of everything else, and remembering that connectedness, I think, is important, and remembering ourselves too when engaging with the like learning about Indigenous people or trying to like remember the natural ways and so on. It's important as well not to isolate ourselves from our context and like romanticize or exoticize what is done in other societies and cultures too, and really like remember those people as like being in their context and like and honoring that for what it is, and not trying to like do what they're doing, because then that can be more of the same problem of trying to isolate something that you like and like building on that, remembering everything in context.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. I think each one of these themes that you've highlighted will have to have more individual teas to sort of unpack that. But one sort of single thread, as I was trying to weave the story that you were sharing from a stimulant to a medicine to food to elixir. And the thread that was coming to me is that the stimulant is where we, as a society, why we're returning is because it's not sustainable. As the stimulant culture is one of hedge funds and wars, where we're just going like drones with these tendencies of more, 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 and the underlying currents of greed and other emotions are sort of guiding us. We're not in control, but do feel a high. And because that's not sustainable, we're returning to the healing mode, which, as you were sharing, is there's this, in indigenous cultures, there is this rebuilding of the feedback loops. So we know where the tea is being grown, and are the people who are growing the tea, are they being treated fairly? You know, what their lives are like. And so these feedback loops are reestablished. And a lot of illness, even in the human body, happens when some feedback loop has been broken, right? And finally, as you're saying, when the culture is healed, and hopefully our civilization will come to that, then the quality of the plant shifts from being a medicine to an elixir, which is just nourishing and maintaining our vitality.
Right, well, yeah, medicine to food.
Medicine to food.
And then to elixir, which can be, a vehicle of spiritual nourishment, growth, and perhaps even used in an alchemical sense, I didn't come up with that term, by the way.
Yes.
But I think it's one that's important to sit with and consider and contemplate and really see the depth of that. And just consider what we're engaging with in a whole way or not. I want to heat up more of the water, by the way, if I don't.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. Cool. From the nature of the leaf as it's going in there, and like if it's like kind of shredded up, it's sort of like the powder almost of the whole leaf tea cake. So it's going to brew very differently than if I was using like the big whole leaves. This is kind of like not just the dust, but it's like a little more loose leaf. And so it's going to brew faster because the surface area is increased in it. And and that actually connects to, right, like how a lot of people might be like, oh, like I like tea, but it's not really for me as a whole. It's kind of bitter, or like I tried green tea, don't like it too much. I know there's other things, but whatever. And a lot of times that's because green tea is brewed improperly. It tends to be a little more delicate, and people will use water that's not the right temperature, steep it for way too long, oftentimes, and then just it doesn't have and that could be due to the quality of the leaf as well, or the brewing. But as we refine more and more and more and more, and okay, make sure I get good quality, well sourced from the farmers kind of tea, whole leaf tea, unless it's matcha or a form of tea that isn't whole leaf, but you know what I mean. Like tea bags, if it's machine processed and it's all shredded up and then thrown into a bag and then steeped that way in a styrofoam cup or something, it's a totally different experience than taking that exact same leaf and then putting in a pot of a certain size and material and then brewing it mindfully. Gong Fu Cha was developed as a way of making, I'm just saying this, I think there's a lot of reasons that Gong Fu Cha was developed, but one of the primary reasons I think was, or one of the great functions of it is to make tea make okay tea taste amazing, or mediocre tea or whatever, taste that much more impeccable, really getting the best out of the leaf, again, by maintaining its continuity. Getting the best out of something instead of by isolating it, really including everything, and allowing one to experience, hopefully, all that is, to experience all that is present, and to maybe all that's present is of a really good quality, and then it can be a really blissful experience. And so Gong Fu Cha is a practice of exploring that, of how can I make the best cup of tea possible given what I have, whether that's knowledge that I have or not, or context, history, the quality of the leaf I have, the wares that I have, given whatever I have, how can I make this the best thing? So
Yeah, I was just going to say it is such a powerful theme that you have mentioned a couple of times in this talk of instead of isolating, you include. And this is something that I'm in my various practices, spiritual and otherwise in life, am noticing that often here in a culture of performance is all about isolation, what supplement you can get, and how can you get more work in your office, and it's all about performance, performance, performance. And it would be great if it works. The problem is, if it works, the results it's giving are not the best because you end up being sick, not just at the individual level, but at the collective level. And just to come back to this idea of inclusion, which you cannot really exclude. I mean, this is a deep topic in itself. In this connection, you can't survive because you are connected with the solar cycles, the lunar cycles, and the food. And if you poison the food, then that doesn't work, right? So a very powerful theme, at least for me as a self-study, to see where am I excluding. So coming back, as you've been serving us tea, you said that it was a part of your practice, and even you've cultivated it in a way that even when tea is absent, you now have something else to bring those qualities of connection and presence. So maybe you could share with us in this tea setup that we have here, what are some of the rituals and aspects of tea that help you cultivate these qualities?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I'd say for me, and it might seem like ironic or paradoxical or something, but I really, first and foremost, try to remind myself that I tell myself I'm not doing ceremony or ritual. Like, this isn't tea ceremony. Tea ceremony is a formalized tradition that I'm not trained in. That, yeah, it can be, Japanese chano-yu or chado, or Chinese chadao or chai. There's a lot of different iterations and stuff or chai can be like kind of how they serve tea for the emperor, like I'm not trained in that. And it can be so much more formalized and have like a lot of meaning behind everything. And not that I don't glean meaning from this little practice as well, but from my own sake and for others as well, it's important for me to boil it down to the simplicity of what I'm doing. I'm just like making some hot leaf juice to enjoy and come back to myself. Mindfully doing so. So you could, that's a whole topic of what is ritual, right? But yeah, with attention, doing these simple things, that, when engaged with mindfully and with awareness, can really be profound in their simplicity. So all we need to brew a good cup of tea is a brewing vessel, water, and leaf. And that brewing vessel could even be the bowl that you drink from. And they say that's like how it started with going from chewing leaf to putting it into a pot, boiling it, and then perhaps, putting it in a pot and boiling it, and then picking up the water with the bowl to having a kettle or a big pot on the boil, and then pouring that in a nice sized bowl with some leaves in it, and then just drinking from that. Or from there they went to what's called a gai one. Gai means lid, one means bowl, and so you have the bowl with the leaves and the water in it, then you put a lid on it, and then you can strain from there, strain the steeped liquid so that it doesn't continue to steep if it's really hot and you're just sipping at it. And then so that this was this progression of becoming more and more refining more and more of how to kind of chip away at the different things and work with the bitterness of the leaf, the inherent bitterness, and to lead to more like I guess comprehensive cups or more and more enjoyable cups. So again, that's what Gongfu-cha is. Just like, how can we get the best out of this? It's kind of like it's like the tea version of cooking or the culinary arts. I didn't mention what we're what we're working with here. So this there isn't a gaiwan here. This is like kind of the next stage, historically speaking, with the pot, and then in Chinese they call it a gongdaobei, which has a couple fun translations. It literally means, well, gongdao is way of the people, bei means cup, way of the people, or justice cup, fairness cup, or just a pitcher. And this, it steeps in here, it stops steeping in there, and then from there I can pour into multiple cups. If you're just pouring for yourself, you could just have a pot and a bowl, as long as the bowl is big enough for the pot. It's that simple. Yeah, so really all you would need is a bowl, some leaves, and hot water to start, and to like go from there. And then as you like refine and like learn more about the tea and your own relationship with it, then it can like turn into all this different stuff. But one of the things I really like about Gongfu-cha is that there's like every implement involved has a practical reason and an aesthetic to it. So it can kind of like be as casual or as formal as you like. And that's the way that I engage with it, at least. And so like if I'm with myself, like I'll just have like a pot and like a single cup, and might not even have like this thing, which is just a means of catching the wastewater. It's called chapan, or tea table. These things can seem like a little like extra formalized or maybe intimidating, right? Like, or very, like fancy, like look at these guys drinking tea. Like, it's just leaves in a pot, and like, you can relax about it. It doesn't have to be all this fancy ware. This matches with my aesthetic, and and I like it. But like, I don't want to like stray too far away from, again, the center of just like being in myself and being able to listen and appreciate what's here. That was a really long answer to what you were just simply trying to point out and ask about. So we have the pot, the pitcher, and the cups. That's like the main
ingredients.
The main ingredients.
And we have a tea pet here as well.
Yeah, tea pets.
That's one of the common questions when I've seen people sit around here at Soft Medicine. The beginners, they always have, what is that?
Yeah, it's always like the thing that people like the most out of everything. People are, why are you, like, in fact, I think this guy wants a little more. Like, why are you pouring on that? So again, there's even a functional reason to that, kind of. Like, it's basically it's the piece of the set that's really nice to pour water over. It looks nice, feels nice. It's an opportunity to pour one out for the homies in this style of tea service. They call wet style, basically, is a means of, like you have this as a means of like catching the wastewater and stuff. You're going to have some extra tea water for different reasons. Like if I'm rinsing out the tea, if there's not enough to give equally to everyone, again, back to that equanimity. The reason that this is called the Justice Cup too is because it keeps the same steeping for each cup. So it's a way of, or kindness cup as well, or fairness cup. So it's kind of sweet in that way. And we need to continue the fairness on to our tea friend, or our cha chong. And basically it's like a fun way of pouring off extra tea, pouring one out for the homies, and if it like represents something to you too, it's a nice opportunity to like, to think of that thing and to like bring awareness to what that might represent in you. It could be like, it could be anything from like a god to a little statuette of Kuan Yin or Buddha or Hanuman or whatever you might relate to. Or a rooster we're in the month of the rooster in the Chinese calendar, so that's why I brought that out. So it's like, yeah, bring that awareness back to time and like kind of where we are in the cosmos in that sense. That's what I think of, and I wonder like, oh, what is the energy of the rooster and things like this. But for a while, like I had a little statue out of like a golden retriever that made me think of my dog that I grew up with, that when he passed away, someone gifted me that little statuette. So like I would have Oliver around with me, wherever I went, just like got to give him a bath, so it's, yeah, like the functional effect of that is like, yeah, like especially if one's with themselves, like still cultivating that connection. Yeah, maybe that connection to something that is beyond us or beyond this like foreseeable plane and reminding us to let our cups overflow and spill over a bit and don't hoard all of it too much.
Yes, very beautiful. Yeah, actually, that is the last piece that you mentioned was the first time that I encountered this sitting with you, the offering to the teapot. I felt triggered in me. It was like, oh, is it going to waste? And this inner dialogue started, and quickly I yielded to generosity, and then started to open myself that I should have that on. It subconsciously became open for the remainder of the tea ceremony. So, but a beautiful aesthetic to cultivate. And I feel that's one of the qualities from as we move away from the stimulant is, are we moving by tendency? And in my life, I feel the opposite of tendency is making life more aesthetic.
Yeah, aesthetic. And yeah, I like how you spoke to, something like that can, something like the teapot can remind us of, generosity and maybe gratitude as well. Like, and right, you were pointing a little bit at like where you were touching on the qualities that maybe can come around from engaging with tea that bring us beyond the plant and beyond that brew and beyond that cup. What are the qualities that it might imbue in us or remind us of in ourselves that are already present? What a beautiful, like, simple human thing. Gratitude, generosity, connection, compassion, kindness, right? Fairness, justice. It's all there. It's all there in just like this little infusion of all of the elements of water, fire, earth, and as Uncle Iroh would say, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of my heroes.
Uncle Iroh.
Uncle Iroh, yeah. When I was like 12, this TV show came out, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and like, it was this character that was all about tea, and people in the tea community tend to.
Yeah, I think in the younger generation, that show is having resurgence because I keep hearing about that.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah, that's like the only show I would watch these days too. Yeah, it's really, it speaks to a lot of like just important things. And as Uncle Iroh would say, drinking tea with a fascinating stranger is one of life's true delights.
Amazing. I love it. So, well, I know, Buck, you have been so busy and you've made time to educate me and hopefully the audience about this sacred ritual of tea. I keep saying ritual and you've corrected me. Much for me to learn here.
If you find ritual in it, that's what matters, and that's a whole topic for sure. I think it's just for my own benefit, really, just like remembering the simplicity of it. But it's if you develop a ritual with it, it's really precious and really important, because it can highlight what's already there and what's with yourself and how can you make your life a ritual. It's a really simple way of doing that. I think mainly what I was saying is that it's not ceremony, or what I'm doing isn't ceremony. Just to just to step back from that. Yeah, it's kind of like drinking wine and calling it communion, but that's all there too. It is a deep rabbit hole to go down with this simple thing, and also, yeah, that's a beautiful way of highlighting everything else in life and all that we can bring as human beings to each other. And yeah, may that be highlighted and respected as such.
Yes, thank you. So maybe on a closing note, you're about to leave for China. And I, for one, and I'm sure the audience is very curious as to, in your tea explorations and more than that, what is taking you there and what might you bring back to us?
We'll see, and we'll see. Kind of going there on a whim, but yeah, I mean, it's not random for me. It may be a bit spontaneous, but yeah, I mean, I'm doing this. I'm this white guy doing this Chinese thing, or this thing that is very rooted in Chinese history and culture, and I should it's kind of due diligence to pay my respects to that, and to if and when I'm able, go there and just kind of take it in, see what's up, make connections. I'm brewing this thing that I talk a lot about connection, but then if I'm not really connected to the place that it's from, I talked about that continuity, and I feel kind of hypocritical. So that's one thing that it's if I'm going to continue on with having a tea house and doing Chinese tea and stuff, I should probably walk the talk and just go there and make connections and be able to speak from a place of that firsthand experience. I speak from my firsthand experience of my own personal practice of having tea and seeing what it's done in connections and in relationships, and just being really enamored by that and really humbled by all that. And and that's what's brought me to just really hold a tender place in my heart for what I've gleaned from a lot of pieces of Chinese culture and Chinese perspective and philosophy, and Taoist philosophy in particular. So it's been alive in my awareness and consciousness for my whole adult life. And yeah, it's just time that I go and pay respects to the place that I've been gleaning so much from. So that's one piece. Yeah, that's the basic answer. So that's why I'm going, is that it's time, and I'm kind of going on a whim. So as far as what I'll bring back, yeah, maybe some perspective and just but again, it's whatever I say is whatever I say, and whatever you hear is whatever you hear, and then you can take that and then run with it, and that's good. I tend to maybe cut down my own impact on folks, because I'm just one person. This is a very important trip for me. And I'm really humbled that it seems important for others as well. And so, but I don't, I'm not gonna come back enlightened. I'm not gonna come back my beard might be a little longer, but just because I'll be lazy about it. So yeah, I'm I think it's important too to shave away those that propensity maybe to idealize, and just be this is the way to engage with life. This is my way. And I resonate with people that connect with it similarly. And I've heard friends who have been to China and who are from China speak to, a lot of principles and ways of connecting that just resonate with me. So I'm kind of ready to...
You're actually going to a monastery or a tea garden? Or?
I'm going to a temple. It's not as much connected with tea as much as it is with internal arts practice. So yeah, traditional Taoist stuff, some Chinese medicine study, and then from there I'll be going to the tea gardens in Yunnan, so I'll be going to Wudang first, and then
that's closer to Burma, right?
Wudang is it's in central China.
It's in central.
Yeah, but Yunnan province is close to Burma. Yeah, southwestern point. So I might even be close to the border there, going to the jungles there. So I'll be in completely different parts of China. It's like going to Michigan and then Arizona or something. Like, there's no comparison there. I just named random states, but like, you know, yeah, or like we're going to like New York and then Oregon, like completely different like cultures within that as well. So that'll be really interesting to like take this like blob of China in the mind and really like piece that apart and make sense of, like I'm familiar with like a lot of like the distinctions between, or not all of the distinctions, but you know, it's not just like a blob of China in my mind. If anything, that might be something that I can like bring back as perspective to folks of like, you know, there's just so much diversity in that country and in that land. I mean, yeah, and it has a history of like, especially in Yunnan province with like, you know, has the most like indigenous hill tribes, like a tremendous concentration of different indigenous groups there that for all intents and purposes are not like Chinese. They're not Han majority Chinese. They are very much their own peoples. So it'll be really great to like just engage with them as well and engage with that way of being, and just to like, yeah, like again, in the spirit of like simplicity, taking away the extra stuff in my own mind and body and just like, yeah, connecting with humans as they are. And it's really easy to like stray from that in my world, just like being so busy, as you pointed out. I'm like trying to make things happen and be productive and like connecting with the community here. And as much as I love it in California, I think it's really important to just like take a breath and like, just step away for a little bit and garner perspective so I can maybe bring something back of value that is beyond me, but that's something that I treasure. And gosh, what a gift if other people treasure that as well.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Buck. And looking forward to connecting with you once you're back.
Yeah. Thank you, Kanan. Thank you for putting this together. And yeah, really sweet talk, and thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Dylan as well for patiently being with us here and helping with this amazing, beautiful setup.